Twisted Metal is a series known for many things: roaring engines, screeching tires, and weapons of untamed destruction wreaking effortless havoc over a world that vaguely resembles our own. It usually contains a roster full of colorful and wacky characters, and their vehicles battle it out across several stages in an effort to claim an ultimate prize, one that has no limit to size, value, or even reality. This stuff we know, but what about the stuff that we don't? Well, today I want to do something a little bit different and just talk about some questions that I, or many other fans of this series, may have about Twisted Metal. It's a bit of a list, but it's also a bit of an unstructured mess where we just dive in and investigate the mysteries and theories that come up while playing and enjoying these games. So if you enjoy this content and want to see more of these types of theory, mystery, discussion videos, let me know what questions or ideas you want to see looked at in this franchise or any other. So let's just get into it. First off, what happened to Harbor City? I don't think anyone would be surprised to find out that Twisted Metal Black was so universally beloved by critics, fans, and the all-important executives at Sony that a sequel was greenlit to carry on the momentum of Black's success. That sequel would come to be known as Harbor City. In 2003, Black's sequel would begin development by the same team at Inc. who worked on Twisted Metal Black, but without the supervision of David Jaffe, who at that time had moved on to start God of War after the release of Black. Undeterred, the team pushed forward with ambitions to take the pitch-dark world of Twisted Metal Black to places the series has never gone before. Set in the fictional location known as Harbor City, this new twisted world would be explored and represented much differently than any other game in the series. Instead of a series of largely disjointed arenas that you visit in some arbitrary order, Harbor City was planned to have battlegrounds that were connected seamlessly by highways, creating one huge map that would have taken over 12 minutes to get across, according to some sources. Traversing that map would not be done solely in your rumbling death machine, as the game planned to feature on-foot sections where you could pilot the chunky creamed ice demon himself. The story would be a linear narrative, played primarily from the perspective of Sweet Tooth. Although not much is known about the story, as all we have is a single rough clip of a potential cutscene called Becker's Island. It's clear that these are big swings for a franchise that always kept its scope small and committed to car combat action, and nothing more. Easily, the ambition of Black 2 went far beyond any other entry in the series, but it never saw the light of day, and not just because it takes place within the mind of a serial killer clown. So what happened to it? Well, it's complicated. We'll start by talking a little bit about how we first found out about this cancelled sequel. Twisted Metal had on release for the PlayStation Portable, and was later ported to the PlayStation 2 in 2008. And with that port came some bonus features and content, including the deliciously cheesy cut FMV endings to Twisted Metal 1, along with a short documentary by the longtime developers of Twisted Metal called The Dark Past. Among these bonus features is also the only official information we've ever gotten directly about Harbor City, as this head-on PS2 port, dubbed the Extra Twisted Edition, gave players the first glimpse at what could have been Twisted Metal Black Part 2, by allowing them to play 4 different levels that were meant to appear in Harbor City. This extra game was titled Twisted Metal Lost, and upon entering it from the menu, you are immediately shown a wall of scrolling text that explains just what the f*** is going on. It describes a tragedy about a group of key developers for Twisted Metal Black 2, having lost their lives in a plane crash during a ski trip to celebrate a development milestone. With the most important members of the team perishing, the game had no choice but to be lost with them. Twisted Metal Lost goes on to spin a tale about a mysterious letter appearing in Sony's offices one day, urging the fat cats in corporate suits to release their work to the world. That letter was allegedly signed with the names of the deceased developers. Sony abided by the wishes of the Ghost devs, and that is supposedly the reason why this was included as part of the Extra Twisted Edition of Head-On. Nice story, right? Tragic, but understandable why Black 2 never materialized in any meaningful way. The only problem is, that story is complete, grade A, USDA-approved, free-range bovine feces. Fake. Hoax. There was no plane crash that killed several key developers, thankfully. So if that was all made up, why was Harbor City canned? There are a number of reasons people have come up with over the years, like that it was scrapped in favor of what became Head-On for the PlayStation Portable, that big bad Sony forced the team at Inc. to pivot from their magnum opus in Harbor City in order to focus on having something ready for the launch of the handheld console. This has been largely debunked, as Head-On was being developed alongside Harbor City. Black 2 was also by some accounts over 3/4 of the way to completion when it was scrapped, So in my opinion, it's unlikely that Sony would decide to waste all the time and effort that brought the game that far into production, especially for no other reason than to move resources to a different, less marketable game. Another theory is that Harbor City was a bite too big to chew for the developers, and despite their ambition, the game just never materialized the way they wanted, and wasn't very good. The closest thing we have to legitimate information is from a developer who worked on Harbor City, whose name is Chad Liddell, mentioning in a Tumblr post that Twisted Metal Black Part 2 was cancelled the week after it entered alpha, because Sony decided that a game in the post-GTA world couldn't be profitable without some on-foot component. The rumors of the game having sections where the players would be out of the vehicle were added in last minute in an effort to save the project, but it just wasn't enough. Chad Liddell also assures us that everyone from that Incognito crew is alive and well, with many landing safely on development teams over at Disney. While this is not official word from Sony, it's the closest we have to answers on what happened to Twisted Metal's most mysterious and ambitious game that never was. Next on our list, who or what is controlling Black in Twisted Metal Black? In Twisted Metal Black, there is a massive brown dump truck called Manslaughter, and it's driven by the People's Champion and Gimp Suit Demon known as Black. Now, Black is very mysterious. Every character in the game will have a series of short dialogue lines that are supposed to serve as the inner monologue between levels that display on the loading screen. These itty-bitty chunks of information are meant to give insight, but in the case of Black, we are only left with more confusion and questions about their origin or purpose that the ending fails to pay off or answer. So, just who is this mysterious entity whose outfit implies a level of horniness that I would be afraid to see demonstrated? A good place to start would be his bio in the character selection screen, right? Oh, there's nothing. Okay, how about those loading screen dialogues we talked about? We see that he speaks in broken sentences, revealing that his name is Black and his goal is to end Calypso, that he was created specifically with the goal of winning Twisted Metal, armed with only 3 lessons: how to eat, how to and how to kill. He also questions if he was always this kinky monster named Black. He shakes the existential dread to spend the next 3 loading screens getting excited about his impending confrontation with Calypso once he wins the contest. When he finally gets to Calypso, his efforts to take him down were thwarted by some Looney Tunes bullshit. Rather than Calypso, Black was met with a bomb and a rude note. However, that wasn't enough to completely destroy Black, and we are left to assume that the hunt continues. Okay, so that's something. His name is Black and he was created to kill Calypso. Great, but why? Well, let's back up a bit, because this actually isn't the first time we've met a demon fellow named Black in the series. In Twisted Metal 1, there exists this thing who is shown to be the creation of Mr. Ash, who is also the driver of Darkseid, and also Satan in the Twisted Metal universe, who upon winning the tournament demands that Black be returned to him before sucking him into a Folgers coffee tin. Black is said to have been given enough power that he could destroy the world if he chose to. So with that information in Twisted Metal 1, we know who created Black, and that at least gives us some context for his appearance in Twisted Metal Black, but that doesn't tell us why Mr. Ash or whoever is sending Black back to Calypso. The TM1 ending implies that Black was taken by Calypso for unknown reasons. Let's dig a little deeper. There exists early versions of the cutscenes in Twisted Metal Black, some of which were changed from the beta stage to the final release. Black is no exception to that, and in early versions of his ending, he was given no voice lines the way he does in the final release. Instead, we hear the voice of his unknown handler. It's basically the same ending where Black enters Calypso's lair and finds a bomb instead of the man behind the tournament, but the difference is, the voice says that he sent Black on a mission to end Calypso to avenge his family.
My family's death still unavenged.
So that's different. Mr. Ash wanted Black returned to him because Calypso stole him, not because he lost his family by Calypso's hand. Maybe that's not it. Let's dive deeper and check out another appearance of Black in the series. That brings us back to Twisted Metal Head-On Extra Twisted Edition, where when you play the lost levels of what would have been Harbor City, we see most of the roster return from Twisted Metal Black, which means Manslaughter and our boy Black return with a short blurb to describe something very intriguing, that Black was sent by the Calypso of the Colorful World to destroy his evil counterpart in the dark world of Twisted Metal Black. The Colorful World? Other Calypsos? What the entire is going on here? I don't blame anyone for dismissing this as just the developers slapping something together for the Extra Twisted Edition, just to have something for Black, but let's entertain the idea that it's more than nothing and see where it goes. Going off of Twisted Metal 1, we know that the Calypso there had possession of Black at some point before Mr. Ash reclaimed him, so it's entirely possible that Calypso could have sent Black out to destroy the version of himself from the dark world. But why? We saw in the beta cutscenes from Twisted Metal Black that he was sent to avenge the family of his handler, grandfather, who we now know as Calypso from the Colorful World. Did Dark World Calypso kill the family of Colorful World Calypso as some sort of interdimensional tomfoolery? Well, maybe, but it requires a bit of theory and generous interpretations of a piece of obscure media related to Twisted Metal. See, prior to the release of Twisted Metal 2, a comic book was created and distributed to a handful of dedicated fans. Only 100 copies were ever published, and of those, only 50 made it into public hands. Lucky for us, one of those 50 uploaded the comic book to the internet for everyone to enjoy. Within that comic book, we are given the story and origin of Calypso and the Twisted Metal tournament. More specifically, how Calypso's tragic past led him to being the head of the Twisted Metal tournament. Calypso's dark history starts when one day he accidentally ran over his little sister in the driveway of their house while he was messing around with the family car. The guilt and grief of being responsible for something that awful had broken him. He couldn't live with what he did and tried to end his own life so that he could join his sister in the afterlife. He did so by forcing his parents to crash their car with him inside. This wasn't enough to take him out, but it did end his parents. Now, with his family dead, he continues through life as this emotional zombie, seeking death by way of joining the roster of a demolition derby. But his reckless style did nothing except earn him win after win during the events. He eventually gets married and has a daughter, but his wife was struck by a wayward wheel at one of his demolition derby events, and her ghost visits him one night, where she tells them that he can finally find the death he's been seeking for decades, if only he learns to let go of the wheel and stop driving. So he plunges his car into a brick wall with his daughter inside, killing them both instantly. This comic book has presented a story where we have a version of Calypso whose entire family was killed by Calypso. This could be interpreted a few ways. Could it be that there is literally some Calypso from another dimension entering the life of this Calypso and compelling him to end the lives of his family members? Could it be that there is no actual dark world, but some metaphor for the darkness that exists inside of Calypso? Could it be that the horror and tragedy that Calypso has endured and even been responsible for has forced his mind to twist and bend and snap, not just in two, but in many different pieces? And this world of Twisted Metal and the many forms that it's taken throughout the series are something Calypso has invented inside his own mind to deal with a reality that he just cannot deal with on its own terms? Well, that brings us to the last mystery of this video. Is Calypso actually a multi-dimensional demon lord? Taking the Twisted Metal games at face value, it's a safe bet to say that either Calypso is a dimension-crossing demon lord whose powers are used to lure the world's best drivers together so that they will destroy each other and have their souls sent to the underworld and be forced to take part in demolition derbies for the devil, as it describes in the comic book. Or each game is more or less on its own and doesn't tie into any other games. But here I want to offer a third theory, that Twisted Metal is a complete fabrication and exists solely inside the broken mind of Calypso. It's already been established multiple times throughout the series that Twisted Metal and the characters in it are living in a world that is not reality. Twisted Metal 2 sees the driver of Roadkill, Marcus Kane, beg Calypso to be set free from the world he lives in because he knows it's fake. Twisted Metal Black explicitly takes place within the mind of one of the characters, Needles Kane. Twisted Metal Head On shows Marcus Kane once again pleading Calypso to be sent back to the real world, where it's revealed for the first time explicitly that Marcus Kane and Needles Kane are one and the same.
I never did like this place.
Just split personalities trapped in the same body. Twisted Metal 2012 also hints that the world the game takes place in is not the only world that exists, as Calypso has a painting in his office that is some otherworldly asylum that has thousands of people locked away screaming to be let out. So what does all this point to? I think it could present the possibility that Calypso invented the world of Twisted Metal to process the pain and trauma and horror that has been his entire life, and each game is just a different way of expressing that. There are countless theories about this series, and each is certainly valid, especially since the franchise is not exactly overflowing with ways to confirm or deny any of them. So take all this with a grain of salt. It's just my dumb speculation and headcanon. One of the theories I've heard is that Calypso in Twisted Metal Black is actually one part of the fractured psyche of Needles Kane, aka Sweet Tooth. Freudian psychology suggests that there are three different aspects of the mind: the ego, the superego, and the id. The game implies heavily that Sweet Tooth is the main character, as he is the most prominently shown character, and the fact that it all takes place within his head, so it stands to reason that Sweet Tooth, Calypso, and Marcus Kane, who again is the alter ego of Sweet Tooth, could represent those different Freudian aspects. After all, it can't be a coincidence that Sweet Tooth and Calypso are both bald and have the same messed up eye or whatever. If you want to explore this idea more, please check out Tactical Bacon Productions' video where he takes a deep dive into this. But for our investigation here, we just need to consider the potential connection between Calypso and Sweet Tooth. The comic book version of Calypso is a tortured man struggling with the guilt of what he did to his little sister, and his descent through darkness saw him seeking his own destruction. But his wish for death was twisted, much in the same way Calypso twists the wish of the contest winners. His wish for death was never granted the way he wanted it. Every attempt left him still on this earth, but cost him the life of someone else around him. We see in the comic book that when he fully makes his way into hell, that instead of being punished for his actions, he is rewarded by the devil and given a new role to start this tournament that will destroy the world and send hordes of talented drivers to the underworld. Perhaps Calypso feels that through his life, his role has always been to speed up the process of sending people to the underworld, whether he knew it or liked it or not. Perhaps thinking of Calypso, Marcus Kane, and Needles Kane as the same person can be a fun exercise to extend across the entire series, not just Twisted Metal Black. After all, we never get to find out what Calypso's actual name is. He was only called Calypso because of the way he would rhythmically beat the metal of the cars back into place after Demolition Derby events. Before that, his name could have been anything. Bob, Tony, Barney, but how about Marcus? Marcus Kane. And Needles Kane and Calypso are characters he invented or became in order to deal with the horrors of life, bending and twisting his mind. If the weight of the guilt of being the reason for the violence and destruction going on around you is too much to bear, why not just assume the identity of someone who is doing it on behalf of some larger, even darker figure of evil? Why not assume the identity of a psychotic killer clown who is not fazed or concerned in any way by the horrible consequences of his actions? Why not assume the identity of a demon lord whose power is far greater than any other, and therefore cares little for mere mortals and sees them as personal playthings? What if him plowing his car into a brick wall was not the moment he finally found the death he's been waiting for since his little sister died, but was instead the moment he fully made his transition from tortured man, with some bearing on reality, to completely disconnecting from the reality and having his mind shatter into these dimensions and characters and ideas that we know of as Twisted Metal, and he's using them all to either escape the pain and suffering and grief, or find a way that he can process it, because like Sweet Tooth and Twisted Metal Black, he's deemed a lost cause that no conventional means can help. I guess the point of this entry is to ask whether Calypso was literally jumping across the different dimensions of these games, or if he's what Sweet Tooth is to Twisted Metal Black, but to the entire series. A broken mind projecting itself over the world. If you would like to see me explore this idea in a more organized way in another video, let me know down in the comments below, because I feel like this is turning into a ramble. But in summary, we know that Black from Twisted Metal Black is sent by the Calypso of the quote colorful world to end the Calypso of the dark world as a way to avenge the deaths of the colorful world Calypso's family. We know from the comic book that Calypso's family was killed by Calypso himself, but more specifically they were casualties to the darkness inside him, compelling him to be reckless and dangerous in an effort to end his own life. So the theory is that Twisted Metal in its entirety takes place within the shattered psyche of Calypso as he deals with the horrors of his life, and the quote colorful world Calypso could be the real world Calypso, and he is actively trying to destroy the part of him that has taken everything from him, his own darkness, himself in the dark world he created. And the different games of Twisted Metal and this Black character, the driver of manslaughter, is just the representation he uses to describe that process. Manslaughter as a concept is something you may recognize as the exact thing that Calypso is truly guilty of in the deaths of his own family. His sister, parents, wife, and daughter are all the victims of manslaughter as a byproduct of an accident that he caused, or at least his efforts to end his own life. Let me know what you think, and have a great day.